everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on episode 2 of Frieren, Beyond Journey's End. Oh my gosh. So I cried last episode. Probably won't be the last time it happens in this series. But I really liked last episode. I liked the setup. I liked the idea that we're starting where the journey ended, and we're going from there with our character Frieren, who, with Frieren, I did not even think about this till I was editing, but her name means freeze in German, and she has this little frozen elf heart, and this series, as she gets to know humanity, is probably going to melt it and make it more feeling and emotional. And I was like, oh, okay, awesome. She's like that character from Love Actually who loves Joni Mitchell, and she's like, Joni Mitchell taught your British wife how to feel. She melted her cold English heart. And I was like, yes. So I'm super excited about this series. I am wary of Heiter, but we'll see the priest. We'll see if he's, I don't know. There's just some vibe about him. Maybe it's the fact that she keeps calling him a corrupt priest, but there's some vibe about him that makes me think that maybe he has ulterior motives. I don't know. Perhaps not, but maybe it's just not the case at all. Maybe it's just me being paranoid, but I do like Fern. I like that Frieren has found like some kind of like-minded camaraderie with Fern so far. Like they both kind of enjoy magic for the same reasons, which I like. So yeah, I'm really excited to see how her relationship with Fern develops, if we're going to get like any major time skips, what that's going to be like, and what she discovers by deciphering this grimoire that she's been given that talks about immortality and resurrection. So I hadn't thought about this last episode either until I was editing, but the whole idea of resurrection, like would she try to bring Himmel back? Is that even possible at this point? Because it's been over 20 years. I doubt it, but that was just me thinking out loud. So yeah, I'm going to be very curious to see what happens. What more we get about her and Fern's relationship if Heiter ends up dying this episode, if he gets too old waiting on her to decipher it, if she ends up just taking Fern under her wing. I think she's going to take Fern under her wing and go on whatever quest she's going on, but we'll just have to see. There has to be some kind of inciting action, which is what I'm waiting for, because in the last episode, we clearly see how Frieren has like gone throughout the kingdoms in the central lands there for decades, looking for random summoning spells. So there has to be some kind of inciting action to make her leave, to go north, or there has to be something that gets her to go on a certain trajectory, and we just have to wait till we get to that point. But I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. But I'm excited regardless. So I hope you all are excited for this episode as well. I want to give a special shout out before we start to our philanthropy tier over on Patreon. There are 3 tiers on Patreon that I have. One is just $1, and that's to vote in the polls, as well as to be a member of our Discord and talk about Frieren there. The second tier gets those perks, as well as getting access to all the videos a week early. And the final tier gets all of that, plus they get a shout out in my videos, and if there are ties in the polls, they get to break them. So I am super grateful for these patrons because they go above and beyond to help support me each month. So I want to give a special shout out to Alex Cornejo, to Anime Annie, to Anna, to Be Happy, as well as to Danger Zone, Dana, Destiny Marie, Eric, Edgar, Loisa G, Kiri, Lyndon, as well as Matthew Palfinier, Shimoyama, Sunspots, Trails, and Translucent Men. Thank you all so much for your kindness and your support. I greatly appreciate it. All of my love. So, with that in mind, I'm very curious to see what we'll get. Will Romania Black cry for a second episode in a row? Hopefully not. I don't want this to become the new Violet Evergarden. But let's go ahead and start. Now, I did get the subtitles and everything right this time. I am watching the Japanese track with English subtitles, so there will be subtitles on the OP, but I'm not going to pay much attention to them. I'm just going to be looking at the imagery instead. So we're going to start episode 2 of Frieren. I hope it's Frieren. We'll do it. We're going to start episode 2 here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Well, I made it through that episode and I didn't cry, even though I wanted to. What a horribly beautiful and sad episode. Again, I'm glad first and foremost that I was proven wrong and that Heiter didn't have anything no malintent was involved. I'm sure now everyone watching episode 1 is like, what are you talking about? But you have to understand, on this channel, I'm watching some doom and gloom anime where all the time characters are not being genuine and they're being two-faced and are actually trying to cause harm. So who am I to think it's not going to happen in this series? But I am very much appreciative of the wholesome, beautiful approach that this series is taking in just explaining the beauty of humanity and of little moments and showing how much they are worth. I absolutely love that. It's wonderful. Honestly, I was thinking about this the entire time. Not to spoil Attack on Titan, if you've not seen that series, but there is a theme in that show that is about appreciating the little beauties and the little truths and the little freedoms that you have in your life. And it's a theme about just, even if the world is dark and gloomy and sad, it's finding these precious little moments that make your life worthwhile. And that's what you live for. It gives you purpose. It defines you. And I think that Frieren, she kind of embodies that. Frieren just is like, what have you been doing these last 70 years? Well, she's been going around gathering these random spells that she can use, and they're not, what I love about it is they're not these spells that are like gonna like destroy monsters and destroy worlds and end wars necessarily, but they're just spells that she can use to help people. She's literally like, she's like a more frigid and resting bitch face version of Kiki from Kiki's Delivery Service. If Kiki's Delivery Service was an elf that's also a mage, you know, I love that about Frieren. I love that she kind of is trying to make up for all of what she assumed about humanity and assumed about time, and that Himmel taught her. I like that Himmel seems like he's going to be this like thread throughout this entire series. It makes sense now why we had to see Himmel, and the fact that he waited for her, the fact that he loved her. Like, it is very apparent in these flashbacks in this show that he loved her. He wanted her to get the hint, and he tried to show off to her. He tried to do all of this, and she didn't really, you know, come to terms with all of it until he died. And then she was like, shit, it's too late. He's dead now. I wasted all this time. And so now she's trying to make up for it in the present. And I love that she's taken on Fern. That's beautiful. It's adorable. Fern is a really good character. I like the combination of Frieren, who is like this ancient, we don't know how old she is, but she's this ancient, wizened character. And then Fern is this young, impetuous mage who definitely does not come at life the same way that Frieren is. So, but I was very wrong from the start of this. Like, right, I was wrong on a lot of counts. From episode 1, I was wrong about a lot of things. I was wrong that Heiter was doing anything suspicious. He was tricking her. That was the corruption. He was tricking her to stay to teach Fern magic, but he was actually not trying to get immortal or immortality. That was just me thinking he was suspect when he was not. But I was also very wrong in that at the very beginning, she talks about that you need 3 key factors to be a mage. You have to have strength. You also have to have control. And then she says that long range magic, it's this combination of 3 factors. It's your strength, it's your control, and then as well, it's also the amount of mana that you have. And her mana is hard to detect, which is why I thought she had a lot of it. And I thought that she had strength because she was firing at the rock and she just couldn't reach it. I thought she was lacking control. No, that's not at all. She has amazing control and she's really good at honing her powers. It's just she's young. She hasn't had time to build up her mana and build up her strength to be able to use it to the full capacity that she could. And that didn't dawn on me. So yeah, I was wrong on that account. I like little baby Fern with her bow in her hair. I like that a lot. But then I like her when she's older. I love like the long flowing purple hair. It's beautiful. I love that about her. It's so pretty. And she just kind of explains, she's like, you've got time. All you need is just patience. She's like, most people have trouble with the control and that's what you're good at. So if you're just patient, you'll end up being a good mage. You just got to wait it out. And I like that very, very opposite of Frieren, Fern is afraid that she's going to run out of time, and she's trying to get to a point where she can prove herself to Heiter before he dies. She's like, I have to prove to him that him taking me in wasn't a mistake, that I can take care of myself so he can die knowing that I'm going to be okay and that I can prove myself, right? And it's just like she's in a race against time, whereas Frieren never seemed to have that problem. And she doesn't want there to be regrets, whereas Frieren doesn't realize her regrets until it's too late. All right? And then just seeing like, and poor Heiter, I feel bad I judged him so badly now. He was just tricking her to stay, but we kind of knew that from the last episode, that he was just having her. What we didn't know was that there was nothing in the book. The book was this thing that had to be deciphered, but that wasn't the issue. The thing was, he was trying to keep her there to train Fern, but that was the main objective. It wasn't just a side thing. Last episode, I was convinced he was trying to keep her there to decipher the book for immortality, and training Fern was just a byproduct of that. And here we see, no, training Fern was the thing, and the book being deciphered was the byproduct. So just switch it up. I love that. That's so good. And of course, because Frieren is so meticulous that it was going to take her a long time, he chose something that was really hard to decipher. What gets me is that she didn't decipher halfway, and seeing nothing, she was like, there's really nothing in this book. Are you sure you want me to decipher the rest of it? And he's like, yeah, go ahead, But yeah, I love the montage of them like blowing up the snowman. That's really super cute. And then, I'm sorry, but seeing him out in the loincloth, I love seeing Frieren where she's just with the book like, please don't look, please stop. I can relate to Frieren a little bit in this instance because we used to travel as a band, I guess, not a musical band, but like a group of people. We traveled to different like fairs and different livestock shows and stuff because my family farms. When I was a kid, we traveled livestock shows and show cattle, and you traveled in a big group. Like there was a bunch of people. It was kind of like not a circus or anything like that, but it was a traveling group of people. And there was this older gentleman that was always with us. He was like in his 60s at the time. And I remember one morning I like got up to get everything ready, and sometimes we stayed in campers, sometimes we stayed in hotels, but sometimes we like camped out on the fairgrounds and we slept in like a tent or in the stalls with the cattle, and that's what we did. And so this is one of those occasions where we just stayed in the stall in the cattle barn. I remember waking up that morning, looking outside, and there was this old man like in his tidy whities just standing there getting ready, and I was like, no! And it was like bleach your eyes out. That's how I feel with him. Of course, Fern's too young to understand, but I like that Frieren's like, I've been traveling with you for years, for 10 years of my life, and now you're this old man here. Why? It was really funny. But yeah, Fern like demonstrating her magic. I love this idea that humans can have the ability to do magic as well. It's not just something that elves have. And I like that she says magic is something you choose to do. Like, I really like that as well. It's not just something limited to dwarves or elves. Humans can do it too, and you have to choose it. And you have to be able, if you can do all three of those things well, then you can control it. I like it. And so yeah, we see him like help her get the books and everything. I like she's doing the circle to show her drawing. I love her staff. I love Fern's staff. I love that as she grows with the staff. It's nice. And then we see them there for 4 years. 6 years total, how long it takes. And I also love that he's like, I didn't notice this in the reaction, but he's like, Heiter's like throwing the broccoli on Frieren's plate. That's hilarious. What a card. And then she gets trapped under the books. Like, she gets trapped in the bushes. Like, poor Frieren, she gets trapped in everything, right? But her scanning through all the books trying to decipher. And then him giving, like, the coat on her shoulder and everything. And I love Fern's hair growing. The episode is so beautifully animated. It's so tranquil and peaceful. And it's just so gorgeous how it's animated. I really like that this show already is taking its time to just let you soak in the atmosphere, to let you kind of, but here's the thing. I'm watching a lot of shows on my channel, and what this show does really well is it not only gives you these tranquil, beautifully animated moments, but you get to know these characters, and it shows them interacting and shows them talking with one another and building those relationships, which is kind of Frieren's whole point, is she wants to build a relationship with these people now. She's learned the value of humanity and how fleeting it is. So she's trying to develop these relationships. And I love that. I love this show is taking its time to develop Frieren's character and her relationship with Fern, because they're going to be together the rest of the season. So we need to build that up. I love that. And Fern just being so impetuous and just trying to learn so much so quickly, right? And Frieren said she's learning more in 4 years than most learn in 10. She's studying too hard. It's not good. Like, why is she trying so hard? And Heiter's like, well, you know, maybe you can get done with the grimoire before she becomes a mage or not. And then of course he collapses, and I think Heiter's death didn't hit me as hard as Himmel's did. One, because Himmel's came out of nowhere. It was like, oh, suddenly there was a 50-year time skip, and you're like, holy cow, what's happening? Why is he old? Oh my gosh, this is not going the way I thought it was. You know, from the start of this episode, it's like, you know Heiter's gonna pass. He's going to die. And his whole point in doing this was to get her to take Fern with her and not leave her behind, right? And that was kind of the whole point. So, and he's been staying alive this whole time, I guess maybe waiting for her to come, or waiting for Fern to get strong enough that she could go out and be on her own and be safe. So you kind of knew what was going to happen, but oh my gosh, it's still really, really sad. It's still very sad, the fact that he's kind of bound. And then when she's out in the rain and Frieren's trying to tell her to put her, you know, training on hold, and Fern's like, no, I have to hit the rock. I have to prove to him that I'm okay. He saved my life. I have to show him that it was worth it. And then we see that she was going to take her own life after her parents had died, which her parents were beautiful. Her dad kind of looks similar to the redhead character, but I will say nothing more to that, just some Freudian stuff there. But her parents seemed like they were so beautiful, and then to lose them in this war, and you kind of see like the devastation left behind from the war where everything's destroyed, and she's going to take her life, and Heiter tells her it would be a waste. And what I love about this is he said, a long time ago, I lost an old friend, and unlike me, he was straight as an arrow, and he never abandoned anyone who is in need. Which I like. I like the idea that Heiter kind of like acknowledges his own shortcomings and is like, I wasn't as brave as Himmel was. And, you know, he would help anybody, and I was not like that. If he'd survived instead of me, he would have saved a lot of people. And I felt kind of bad for Heiter, because at that point I'm like, but you know, he was in his 80s when he died. If he had stayed alive and you hadn't, he was already so old. Would he have saved that many more people? Would he have? I'm like, don't sell yourself so short, Heiter. And then he ends up saving Fern, who's this beautiful mage. And it's like, look what you did. You did something really, really well. Even if it was saving one person, it's still one person. And that seems to be the moment he stopped drinking, was he had the bottle that he didn't drink any more out of. Instead, he took her in, right? He's like, the courage and strength and friendship I learned from him, even all my precious memories would vanish from this world if I wasn't in it. So I want to make sure that I, you know, live out the rest of my days doing him justice. And then she remembers her parents and everybody seeing a priest or a mage of their own. I'm assuming this is a mage. Maybe not. I thought it was a priest in the reaction, but I think it's instead a mage because they have the staff, right? So maybe in that moment, she decided that that's what she wanted to become, because maybe that mage helped out her parents. We don't know, but in that moment, that's what she decided to do. And it looks like maybe they were the one that took the photo of her, because they're there. Maybe they took the photo and created the locket for her. Because right after that, it shows them together in the picture. If you have precious memories inside yourself as well, it'd be a waste for you to die. So I guess he did make the locket out of that moment. Interesting. That's cute. And then, yeah. And she's like, he did the right thing, and I don't want him to regret saving me. So she's like, I don't care if it's as a mage or whatever else. Learning some kind of skill to support myself is a way of repaying him. And that's why she asked later, she's like, well, why'd you choose magic? You know, if you could have done anything, you chose magic because that's what you wanted, right? I like this idea that goes back and forth of Frieren and Fern deciding whether or not they are like each other, because they are like each other. They just express it in different ways, and Fern is young and hasn't had as much experience as Frieren, but I feel like Frieren sees herself in Fern, maybe how she was in the past. Which is interesting, right? Because she says later, she's like, I was really apathetic for a time. So here's the thing. We've talked about how magic can be used to do all of these like simple maybe mundane, but beautiful things. And Fern kind of brings it up. She's like, you could save all these people with this magic. And Frieren's like, yeah, no. She kind of brushes it off. We'll talk about that when we get to it. She kind of brushes that aside, being like, no. This is more important. I feel like at some point, we're going to talk about what that magic can be used for, besides just this simplicity and this stuff. And then I feel like Frieren's going to tell her, being like, yeah, you could use this magic to cause a lot of problems, even though you think you're saving people. I think that's going to come up at some point, is her saying, like, having all this magic, it's tempting to want to go and save the world. But Frieren's probably like, if you've been around the world as long as I have, you'll realize that it can be very cyclical, and you kind of will get yourself trapped in a corner if you do that, and it'll make you apathetic to the world, because then you'll do one good thing with your magic, but then all these other things will happen, and you'll just get caught up in the cycle. Right? And I think that's her way of breaking away from it, is doing all these little things instead, which is interesting. And I'm all here for it. I'm here for that thematic element if we get to it, but I feel like it's coming, because we've talked about like the simple beauties of magic. Now we got to talk about what happens if you use it for something else. But yeah, I love just the way they show the passage of time in this series, by showing how the books have piled up and how Fern's hair has grown, and then her finally blasting the hole through the rock. And then Frieren's like, yeah, there was nothing in this book like you said there were. And he's like, well, of course, because if there had been, Ewick would have used it on himself. And she's like, you tricked me, you old man. And he's like, yes, I made you stay and train her, and now you have no reason not to take her with you on your travels. What I love about it, though, is he said there was something in the drawer to take with her that was payment, so I don't know if that was just money or if there's something else that we'll get to know later. And he's like, I like that in this moment he says, I want you to take her with you, because I don't want her to see me die. She's seen enough people die. I don't want her to experience losing anyone else. And I like that Frieren's like, no, she's going to stay here with you until you die, because she needs to share these last moments with you so you can properly say goodbye and she can have closure. If I leave with her now and she doesn't have closure with you, then it will just break her heart even more. So she's like, no, we're going to stay here till you're gone. And they do. And I love that she kind of walks off and lets them have their moments together. And then she's like, why did you save Fern? And then he sees back then Himmel saving those kids. And he's like, it's what Himmel the hero would have done. And she kind of just smiles at that. It's so sweet. And then, yeah, they go to the grave. And I love that she pours out not only the liquor that he saved, but the one that she brought him. Like, she pours dose out for our boy Heiter. I can't believe I judged him. I judged him so wrong. I'm glad that I was proven wrong. I'm glad this series is seemingly a lot more beautifully minded than I was. I've been watching some really cynical and depressing shows lately, and then I've just been like very traumatic. And so to get to this series where it's just beautiful and upbeat and positive is refreshing, to say the least. So refreshing. But I love this. I love they just help random farmers with their pumpkins. Like, it's been 26 years since the death of Himmel the hero in the Turk region located in the Central Lands. So just making their way through. And again, Fern's like, why are we doing all of these simple little things? And Frieren's like, because that's what we can do. It also helps explain why Frieren has been passing her time like in these lands. She's been gathering up the most random of spells just as a hobby. And I like that Fern can't understand why it would be a hobby. She's like, how can magic be a hobby to you? And Frieren's like, because I'm like hundreds of years old, and eventually you don't have anything else to do. I have to do this. I am curious though, at this point in the story, because we understand what she's been doing the last 70 years. I am curious if before she left Himmel and their crew after their 10-year crusade, had she been involved in just battles up until that point? And then after her crusade with Himmel and Himmel kind of changed her, she was like, nah, I'm going to go off and do this little stuff instead. I'm not going to go on these big crusades anymore. Is she going to be like a Joan of Arc character? Or is she going to be like someone that was really malicious, and then that's why she was hired to go on this, Demon King slaughtering quest, and then afterwards she kind of changed her tune? I feel like there's some past there that we need to get to at some point, but it's all a question, right? And so then, yeah, I like that Fern just doesn't understand. She's like, you really do love magic. And she's like, oh, no, I only like it somewhat like you. And Fern's like, maybe we're different. And she's like, no, we're the same. She's like, I was like you once, and it took me going through all of this to get to this point, right? So they find this herbalist who doesn't have any spells, but she takes them to the statue from Himmel. What I love is that it looks like such a simple statue, but then she's just like, gross. And, you know, at first I was like, Frieren, because we see this beautiful backstory where Himmel saves the girl and has this big impact on her. She remembered him after that. But then we find out that Frieren's like, no, he should have declined making the statue because he made he made the sculptor spend 18 hours trying to choose a pose. And what I love about Himmel as a character is that he's very, very sweet, has a beautiful heart, is such a beautiful soul. But there was this kind of like vain side to him that we're seeing in these flashbacks where he was like, yes, I am handsome. Oh, Frieren, don't you notice how handsome I am? Look at me posing. Like, he clearly was showing off and doing all this to get her attention. And of course, now whether it worked or not is what she would admit or not. But I love that she looks back on it going, what an oaf. But there's like a little line of endearment that's there that's so good, right? And she's like, fine, we'll clean this up. And then she's like, I wish we could find these moonflowers, these moonweeds. And then she remembers that they were around this area, and that's the one that she wants. I also love that the squirrels are called seed rats. Seriously, seed rats is what I will now call squirrels from now on. I will just call them seed rats, and that will be it, because that is freaking hilarious. I love just follow the seed rats. That's all we need to call them. It's great. But yeah. So the thing about it is they go looking for this weed and they're looking everywhere. And Fern's like, is it really important that we find it? And Frieren's like, I'm really just doing this for myself. I'm not really doing this for the old lady or for Himmel. I'm doing it for my own purposes. And that is that she wants to pay back Himmel for teaching her this moment of humanity. And so she's like, I'm kind of just, this is my own agenda. I'm doing this for me. Which at this point, everything Frieren is doing is pretty much for her own agenda because she's been around so long, right? She doesn't have any obligations. She doesn't have anybody she has to own up to or do anything for. She's just like, once you've traveled the world so many times, what else can you do? You know? And again, Fern's just kind of like, I like the big turtle that they find. That big turtle with all the flowers on it. It's great. It also feels like Frieren is trying to teach Fern the value of all the little things that you can do with magic and enjoying like these simple little moments in life. Like she's trying to teach Fern to embrace those because Fern is in such a hurry throughout most of the story. She's in such a hurry to develop her magic that Frieren's like, whoa, slow down. You got time. You've got plenty of time to do this. Also, Frieren is not a morning person. I love that Fern has to like help her get up and get ready. That's super cute. The little montages with both of them is so sweet. I love how beautiful this episode is in showing all these little moments with the two of them. And again, it feels, I keep saying Kiki's Delivery Service because that is one of my favorite Ghibli movies. But I love that movie by Hayao Miyazaki because Kiki's Delivery Service, there's no big conflict. There's no big overarching villain. There's nothing that's really like, that's just pressing in that movie. It's just this beautiful, simple story about a girl finding herself and finding her talents and embracing them and the little things that she does for people and the influences that she has along the way. And that's really it. It's how she finds herself and influences others. And that's kind of like this episode encapsulated. It's finding themselves. Why do they choose magic? Why are they inspired by it? Why is it part of their being? Why did they choose to make it part of their being? And then them just using it to help others in little simple ways. It's so beautiful in its simplicity, right? And then she's like, shouldn't she spend her time searching? She shouldn't spend her time searching for something that doesn't exist. This flower. And I like that the old woman's like, maybe you should tell her this. Maybe you should tell her this, maybe you should let her know rather than keeping this bottled up. I'm sure she sees things differently since she's so much more mature than we are. And then she gives her the seeds that were supposed to be used for medicinal purposes, but we're a related species that could be used to grow something similar. And I like that the girl, Fern, is like, let's just plant these instead and do that. And that's when the seed rats come and take them. And instead, Frieren's like, let's follow them instead. Also, I don't know if it's because the seeds had magic in them that let them see the footprints, or if that was just us seeing through Frieren's eyes, or what that was, or if they pooped and it got on their legs. I don't know. But I liked the visual effect of them following the footprints. And then I also liked that Frieren gives her the head pats, kind of like Heiter did to her. That part was really sweet. And then they end up following it to the tower, which giving me lots of Tangled vibes, right? So Fern asks her, why does she collect spells? And she's like, well, it's a hobby of mine. And she's like, well, yeah, that's hard to believe. And she's like, it really is just a hobby. I used to live a lot more apathetically. What I like about Frieren is we see her opening up to us, the audience, and we see more of her emotion, but we also see how she was back in the day and how it's so weird. It's the littlest things, because she's not that much different from episode 1, but she already seems like she's opening up more because she seems so much colder and distant in the flashbacks in this episode. And again, we see the elven woman that looks, she has the angel wing there. We saw her in the visual of the last one with the king, but here she looks like an elf and she has the wings there. I don't know if she's literally winged or if that's just a artistic representation. But she like blooms all the flowers there just to make it look prettier. And of course, Himmel and the others. I like Ison getting the little flower crown. That part was cute. And Frieren, let it be known, Frieren was not shipping Heiter and Ison. Frieren was not shipping them. She was not into that BL. How dare you, Frieren? But again, Himmel shows how much he cares about her, like making her the flower crown that we see in the OP and trying to like make her feel like a princess. He's like, look, isn't this beautiful? Like, this is wonderful. And telling her about the flowers. He was flirting with her so hardcore. He was telling her about his hometown, telling her about himself. And then, she's like, then I got to know an idiot who would, what does she say there? She says, then I got to know an idiot who complimented the spells that I gathered. She's like, that's all. She's like, I took for granted all these spells that I had and I just used them. Like, she just magically made flowers popped up without even caring what kind of flowers they were. And then he like told her how beautiful they were. And she's like, I took for granted all of this magic that I learned. And he like melted my heart and made me realize how good it actually was and how important it actually was. And I like that Fern says, oh, well, that's a silly reason. And the way that Frieren looks back, she says, you're right. And the way that she looks back and kind of like points to the tower, I think that redheaded boy that is in the OP, I think he's going to end up becoming the new Himmel of this generation, the new hero. And I think Frieren is going to play wing woman for Fern and be like, Fern, don't be like me. Don't take this magic for granted. Don't take these relationships for granted with these humans. You have a chance to be with him. Go for it. Don't carpe diem. Seize the day. And is going to try to teach her to like live and the importance of living. So I could be wrong. That may not be what happens, but I'm just thinking it could be. But yeah. And then they get to the tower and they climb up to the top of it. And then, I like that she comments about squirrels because yes, squirrels do tend to forget where they bury things at, like you do. But I love that Himmel talks about the flower in his homeland. And he's like, yeah, that flower there is beautiful. Not as beautiful as me, though. And she's like, okay, I'm going. I love that she just, every time he starts to get a little bit vain, she starts to ignore him. It's hilarious. And then he says, Frieren, someday I want to show them to you. And that's why she's so obsessed with it, because he wanted to show her the flowers, and now she wants to actually be able to see them, like he said. It's so gorgeous, like all the blue flowers and her finally seeing them. Oh, it's beautiful. And just that one animation where she like caresses the flower petals and everything. Oh, I didn't know how I would feel about Himmel dying at the beginning of this, but the fact that he's with her, she's like literally taking his spirit with her, as she goes to all these different places. It's beautiful, and I love it. And I love that we're getting him as our thread of, like, his spirit is living on through teaching her and her teaching Fern how to appreciate all of this. It's beautiful. And so then she's like, why are you so passionate about magic? I don't understand. And she's like, but you do. You never gave up on being a mage. You could have been anything else, but you chose magic. And she's like, I'm the same. That's what I'm passionate about. Oh, I love it. And then her, like, with Heiter, it's so pretty. And now the statue will never be forgotten. And then they give the little flower crown. Yes. I would be happy if we just followed them on their magical adventures as they help out people and learn about each other along the way. But eventually, we're going to have to get into some inciting action because that imp is in the background. Waiting to be seen, along with these other side characters that the OP is showing us. But this was such a beautiful episode. Like, so beautiful, explaining more with Frieren, why she spends her days doing the things that she does, her taking in Fern. I love the idea now that Heiter, and I swear, if Ison dies too, I'm done. Which he probably will. That redhead boy with the axe, oh my god, if that axe is from Ison, and I joked that he was Ison's son, but he's not a dwarf, but if Ison gives the redheaded boy his axe, and they form this new party... Oh, yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. We're going to see Ison. Ison's got to die now. The old party has to die out for the new generation. And we're going to see Ison. He's going to give the boy his axe. And that's how he's going to get into the party as well. She's going to be like, fine, I'll let you in, boy. Oh my god. I don't know. Maybe. Who knows? But... I really love this episode. I love what it represents. I'm sad that Heiter's dead. I'm sad I misjudged him. But I really like Fern's character so far, and I love the development with the characters of Frieren and Fern that we've got. It's really beautiful. So I'm excited to hear your comments down below. I hope you all enjoyed this episode reaction. I'm sorry I keep saying Frieren's name wrong. Eventually I'll get it all right for the entire episode. But in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And yeah, I'll be back next week with episode 3 of Frieren. Bye.